All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to our June 2026 release recap. I'm Amanda. I'm going to be talking through the USAS portion and through inventory. And then we will, after that, we'll move on to USPS. Andrea's going to cover that. And then we'll wrap up with Mary talking about ESS and Ippy Dippy. Okay, so the first thing before we jump into the actual USAS releases is we have sort of a resource highlight section here. I believe we had this last month, and so if there's anything like relevant, like if we have new pages that may be a helpful resource, we're gonna be putting them here. So this month I have this page is update Medicare accounts. For anyone that may have been on the USAS cash account, cash account change, Fridays with Fiscal, I did mention this page, but it was sort of like a preview. It wasn't available to view for everyone yet, but it is now. So I wanted to link this on here. This can be found in the USAS documentation, in the actual USAS user manual, and then from there, the appendix and useful procedures. So here, you know what? Let me go with USAS documentation and then I'll take you there so we have a good view of it. So, all right, so this is just the USAS documentation page, and then here we have appendix, useful procedures, and it's this last one on here, update Medicare accounts. Okay, and so I know, hey, we're in USAS, but we're talking about Medicare, and basically the reason that I made this page. Now, some districts I believe have already updated this, and they're past this point. You're all good. But there were, we've had changes to the AOS manual in the last year or so, and some codes have been added, some have been updated for their descriptions. So the situation with these codes that are related to Medicare, it's not that they were changed, like there's no new codes here, but what they did is they updated the description on the 213 and the 223 object codes, which clarified that they were to be used for Medicare. So when they did this, a lot of districts are now realizing like, hey, we've been using 249 and 259. And obviously with like, benefit accounts, like this could be a good number of accounts. So this blue box right here is I took this from USAS manual FAQ that they published in 2026, May 2026. And they do have an FAQ addressing this and basically like, what object code should be used. And it also includes like when this should be done by. So you can read through this here as far as what their reply is. But the relevant part is that beginning July 1, 2028, they want all school districts to switch over to using the 213, 223s if they aren't already. And so I figured, since we had a couple questions on it, I figured, well, we might as well just go ahead and write a page because, I'm sure there, like I said, there are some districts that have already switched, didn't need to switch, but we may have, districts still looking to update codes related to this for the next, couple years. So I put together, you can see that table of contents here grew quite large. This page could also be referred to, for sort of like changing any kind of bulk accounts, even though I did, like the example here is Medicare, but it does have some other helpful references in it. So, um, as with a lot of account code updates, like there's no one way to do it. So, this kind of goes through and covers different options as far as how you may want to do it, but I tried to put some good detail in here about like helping to find the codes and then like the mass load process with creating new account codes. Now, account change, if they are going to be actually doing an account change in the current year on these, which now that we're in the new year, they don't really have to do that. But like if they are cleaning this up at like the end of a fiscal year and want to change everything back, they could account change these. And instead of mass loading, accounts could be made through account change. So, this covers that option is the case. And you can see I have some Excel screenshots here where even with like a formula, if you set the spreadsheet up the same way, like this would be an easy way to, extract from the account grid, change, have like the old and new object code, and then be able to make an account change import sheet pretty easily. So, I'm not trying to go too deep into all of this, but I kind of want to give you a preview of some of the things I have on here. So, I like how this section worked out. I actually did quite a few tests, while making this with this. So, um, I hope that's helpful. And then let me just do my scrolling here. Budgeting updates. We're gonna talk about some of the things with the budgeting updates with actually even going through this document are related to what we're gonna talk about for the USAS updates. And this is why I'm kind of like, going even a little bit more into this than, just because like our documentation note, but this is directly relevant. So we have some notes here as far as what they may need to do with budgeting updates. And then this is the part I wanted to get to is at the end, we also have USPS updates then, because obviously if you're updating Medicare accounts, the whole first part is getting the new accounts added on the USAS side. But of course, these also, if they're using employer distribution, are going to be relevant on USPS and how their employer distribution is getting created. So we have those steps there, that we did in coordination with our USPS team here at SSDT. So yeah, so this has a whole lot of info, but that is now out there and available, for anybody to see. So I hope that, if that's something that you encounter, that will be a good resource. All right. So what we're looking at for USAS releases, we actually had four of them. And so we had one regular release and then three of them as hot fixes. Um, and we're gonna see these sort of had to do with timing. I believe as far as like why they were hot fix, we kind of prioritized some other things that had come up versus proceeding with like the next regular release. So um, so we had four of those. And before talking specifically about the updates, I, again, a lot of this has to do with account change. So this is sort of like a precursor. When applying a normal account change, just like the general account change, um, overview of what it's doing is when applying account change, it updates all current and future year transactions. So, at this point, like if they're in 27, there's not a future year. But if you have districts that are still in like June of 26, finishing up their fiscal year, or like in the future, if that's the case where, July is open, or like budgets have been posted in July, or any POs have been posted in July, but they make a change in a prior month. They run an account change in like the previous year to where they have the budgets. It will update current and future year transactions. It updates proposed amounts in the budgeting proposed amount grid if they exist, which that would update the next year proposed, which is what shows on the account. The from account is made inactive. But one thing, and sort of looking through it, like with a fine-tooth comb in this Medicare account process, it does not update any data in the scenarios or the budgeting sheets. Because the account change, like they could have multiple scenarios. The budgeting sheets are sort of like a working area. And so, generally, I don't know that that's that big of a problem, but once we started looking at some of this, and I know with the account code changes, account change is like more relevant than ever. But this is an important note. So when you apply an account change, it doesn't update any scenario, or it doesn't update information in the scenario. However, it updates everything else. And so if there's a situation, this is only really something that needs to be addressed if the scenario needs to be promoted again. And so if that's the case, then a district can go in and update the accounts before promoting. So the first thing then to talk about actual updates here is we improve the budgeting process to prevent users from budgeting to inactive accounts with stop dates. Um, so because we sort of like ran into this where the scenario isn't updated, what this first update does is essentially makes a safeguard. So if they don't update the scenario, so I apply an account change and I am in the budgeting process. Like I have my 2027 scenario and I have proposed amounts for 2027. If I ran an account change on some of those accounts, my proposed amounts grid would update, which is great. Then my next year proposed, anything that's being like, posted as a future year PO could pick that up to the correct account. However, if I then go in and promote my scenario again, what happens to those? And so what this update does is it actually updates account change so that because it's already making the old accounts inactive, but it's also adding a stop date now. And so it's the stop date is the year that the account change is processed on the old account. And the old account's already being made inactive, intended not to be used anyway. So we figured this would be an update that's essentially kind of just, double doing it. But the purpose of this is that if a scenario is applied and an account has a stop date, it won't be promoted with the rest of the accounts. So this update prevents if a scenario is not, like mistakenly like not updated after an account change, you can't go pushing forward accounts to those old inactive accounts. So, um, if a scenario needs to be promoted again after the included amounts have been changed, if the from accounts remain in the scenario when it's promoted, those accounts will not be promoted to the proposed amounts grid. If the two accounts have not been included and the scenario is promoted, those rows will be removed from the proposed amounts grid because they're not in the scenario. But this would then tip them off, like the old accounts are still in the scenario. So like if I had the case where I account changed to a different object code, like what I would do is I would go to the scenario, locate that account and change the code in my sheet. Uh, and so this okay, so then when it gets promoted, it's just like it's not including these. Um Now we have a note here, errors and warnings will not currently show in promotion, but we're going to review for a future update. So this is something that we thought of include in the update is like ideally, okay, so it's not going to promote these accounts because they were account changed and they have a stop date. So like, hey, let's give a list of warnings to show those. And that was something that we considered in within this update, but we were seeing some other odd things and it was basically something where we didn't want to we want to evaluate the errors that are showing before we start, having potential like errors just show up in this process when, treasurers are closing their year. So what we need to do is just take some additional time to review how those errors would show and making sure we could grab the ones that would be intended uh and how we would want it, want it to show for those accounts that are not being promoted. So anyway, so that's not an update now, but that is something with, with this update that we did talk about. That one just, again, these were updates were included in hot fixes because we're trying to get things out to make sure that, we're preventing any possible like unintended updates. So the next bullet point I have here is the outcome of the situation will vary depending on if the proposed amounts have been applied. Once the fiscal year is changed to July, the next year proposed amounts are no longer needed. Options for updating this scenario, and then this is where I link to that budgeting section that I showed you of my Medicare page, and could be referenced for any type of account change. So just to go back here, I think I linked right to my, I think I should jump to the budgeting. No. But what I did here is also sort of explained this, and then there are a couple options that I gave just like a more specific example too. So like, hey, you could find, the account in the sheet and then like click to update, or you could download the sheet and do like a control find, drag, you could do like a find and replace. Like this isn't exhaustive, but like these are just goes through some of the options then for updating the scenario. The other thing to keep in mind is like this is a very specific point in the year that this would be in consideration, right? Because, if it's an account that they're changing, like if they change throughout the year, then budgeting may not be relevant. Um, so yeah, so that's the improvement we made as far as promoting the scenarios and how that works with accounts that were changed. The other thing that we and then I have this update related to Mini Orange, so we updated some fields there. For bugs, the account change job was corrected to update all future year transactions related to the account being changed. Now, this was another one I believe we sent. I think there was an email related to this one. Yes, that Jody had sent. Um, so this is, um, remember the first thing on the list here is that when applying account change, it updates all current and future year transactions. So this part was a bug because when we what we had seen is that it was changing all the current year transactions, but future year transaction, aka the budget in like the next year, wasn't being moved over to the new account. So that is corrected. So if you had processed an account change or cash account change in the fiscal year, um, then when the job ran, that would have basically it was moving all the numbers in 26, but it didn't move the numbers in 27. This bug fix made it so that future account changes update correctly, update the current and the future year. And then I'm just going to go right down here to patch because at the same time, we also released um, well, actually, I believe it was like one hotfix later, but we also released a patch that went in, and anybody that had amounts that didn't move with an account change they had done were fixed to be moved to their new account. And we made sure that we released all of these, before the end of June because really that wasn't anything that anybody would, it wouldn't really be affecting anything until the current period is July. So hopefully that didn't cause too many headaches in the meantime. We really tried to get that updated in advance of the closings so that it wouldn't, cause any problems or panic anyone. But yeah, so we ran a patch to fix all of those. It cannot happen. It'll work updating appropriately in the future, so we are set there. And then we had another bug related to transaction key. This was basically just throwing an error, an odd error on account change, and we corrected that. Um, the other patch that we had here was we any account changes that were run in 26 previously, since we were updating the behavior so that account change adds a stop date. Um, we also, patched any previously run account changes to add a stop date just to make sure that if somebody was like reapplying their scenario with the old account and they had like old accounts from an account change, they wouldn't accidentally overwrite those. Ultimately, the problem to prevent is that we didn't want them to promote and then apply because then if you're applying to the old accounts in the new year, um that could, that's gonna cause an issue. I think overall, here's the thing, like, all of this we've done to do our best to manage right now, what we could prevent and how we could improve this process. I think there's still a little bit of a question mark for me on if like the actual um posting of temporaries and permanents ever has a use to post to inactive accounts. So if that is something that you have feedback from your districts on, let us know because what we didn't want to do is right at fiscal year end, like completely cut off the situation of like posting those initials to inactive accounts in case there is some use that we're unaware of. The stop dates were already not being promoted. We just sort of used that, use kind of an existing situation to like then make sure that we could manage these current account changes. So I know like, if you're posting as adjustment, it doesn't allow to inactive accounts. But yeah, I think that's something, keep your ear out for. And if you have feedback on that, I could see like, future improvements to the budgeting in the future considered as well. So I had a couple more patches here. These were internal things down at the bottom. But yeah, that's USAS. So mostly like account change focus this time. Okay. All right, so I'll hop down to inventory. A couple things here. We did have two inventory releases this month. So a couple things that we wanted to get out there before fiscal year end. Um, they both were regular releases. Again, we had this update with the mini orange, related to mini orange. And then what we did was we corrected a couple bugs. So the first thing here is correcting the handling of life-to-date depreciation for split items. So this is a bug that we had located with some of the balancing questions related to depreciation in the past year or so. And basically what this makes sure is that when an item is split, the life to date depreciation for the current year is like appropriately calculated and stamped to both items. We saw some discrepancies in the past where like at first it was looking normal, like you'd split the item and it looked normal on each of the new items, but then if you ran like a book value report, it was just reading as zero. And so that's the correction pretty much with the current year. In addition to that, when the next year was closed, it was then just like updating those to like a new calculation that really didn't even take into account the previous life-to-date depreciation. So there were some odd things happening there. It wasn't something that we saw a lot of because this is like also specifically when you're splitting an item and when it already has like a life-to-date. Now, um, and that would be like from prior year. The other thing though is it's fixed when you split an item going forward. The next release, which was the second release in this month, will contain a discovery patch to review items that were split prior to release and determine if they have values that need to be corrected. So we've got the patch out there to look to see, okay, are there items related to a split now that maybe were affected by this bug and now we may need to patch them? That we sent out to, sort of see and locate what those items are. And so we don't have, the actual next step of that yet, but we're on the way. Um, and then uh, correct the life-to-date depreciation calculation for adjustment transactions. The life-to-date depreciation calculation has been updated to ignore manual adjustment transactions from prior fiscal years because the value is already being included in the life-to-date amount. This was specific to the schedule of change in appreciation summary report and book value report. This was something related to reports. Um, and so just to explain this a little bit, the when you're looking at an item, you go down to the section where it shows the depreciation. It has the field for life to date depreciation. Now that field represents the depreciation through the beginning of the last closed fiscal year. So like if I'm in the current year, that's my starting depreciation. And then if I, certain reports will like calculate my depreciation for the current year, and then I'll have like my ending value, which the schedule of change in depreciation does this. Summary report, it has your starting depreciation, anything that's been like added, for continuing items, for new items, and then it has your ending value. So the life to date depreciation in most cases is, the start of the year. Now, you can enter those like manual adjustments, manual depreciation adjustments. Well, the manual adjustments change the life to date depreciation amount. So they essentially change that starting amount. And so like if you're in the current year, you apply that to your life to date depreciation and boom, okay, it'll be updated. Well, what was happening that we found is for the reports, like if there was a previous year where that life to date had been adjusted, then there was an adjustment that existed, but it also updated the life to date. Then the life to date is the starting balance. So now, if there are any adjustments for this year, those need to be applied to the life to date. But if there was an adjustment last year, it's already included in whatever my life to date is now. And basically, it was found that in some cases it was like double applying the adjustment. And so because that already like had changed the total, it didn't need to change the total again, essentially. So so that update went out as well. And then this last item here is just a patch. This was what I mentioned above, patch to look for. Um, oh, wait a second. That's a different one. Just kidding. Um, So the patch that I have listed here is actually one that we had released to look for transfers, acquisitions, and dispositions related to an item that no longer has like a matching tag number. So this is something we've actually sent out previously, similar patches because um, I believe we had, I think, for dispositions, we had it reported that there was some odd behavior there. So this is sort of an extension of that previous situation to review these transactions and make sure, that data is all consistent. So, all right. Okay, I think we're good to move on. Awesome, Andrea.
Thank
Okay,
you, Minda.
thank you.
Go ahead and get my screen shared here. All right. See which one I need. It's this one. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and get started with the payroll side of releases. Thank you for joining us today. Happy Friday. We had quite a few releases this month in June. Two regulars and the other four were hot fixes. So we didn't have any new features this time. So we'll move on to improvements. The improvements for this one is they added the suppress social security number option on the STRS advanced reports. So now when you do go to your STRS advanced reporting and you're creating these reports, you do have that option to suppress it. So it does not show on the reports anymore, just the reports here. So you have the option, you can uncheck or check it. The next one is to improve the payee selection under payroll item configuration. So if under core in payee, if you have these payees archived here, these should no longer show then when you go to payroll item configuration and are creating a new payroll item configuration or you're modifying. When you go to the drop down, you should not see these archived payees anymore in this drop down selection. The next one is the performance improvements. For the payroll account distribution detail report, they were able to improve this by 90%, which is, I think, is awesome. the budget distribution report by 86%, and then the pay amount summary report by 68%. So they're working on trying to improve these performance improvements when they're running these reports for when the districts are running them. The next one is the payment transaction status report. We had a district that uses it when they run it by CSV. They notice that the repeat, if an employee has multiple direct deposits, so saying they have a checking and then they also have a savings for the remainder amount. This was calculating the net and gross here on these columns. So now when they run this report, it's only going to show the gross and net one time, the total. And then if they have multiple savings accounts underneath, then it will not include that anymore. So now they'll be able to balance using this sheet. For W2C, we added a property to set the FICA no Medicare employee flag to WC entry. So now it kind of matches just like when you run W2 report or the W2 submission file. You see how they're broken down, like the no Medicare is always at the top of the report and then the Medicare employees are at the bottom. So it's doing the same thing for the W2C now. So now when they do go and have to create, if they're creating multiple employees, they can go ahead and now click that one employee. Let me click employee here. Right here, FICA, no Medicare employee. So if this employee that they're correcting and they're one of those employees that are no Medicare employee, they want to make sure they click this box when they're doing their W2C corrections. And then when they do that and they create the submission file, they will see these are now separated. So you're going to see two lines here. So one, the R is the Medicare, I believe. Yeah, on check. Yeah, those are the no Medicare employees. Will show at the top just like they would normally on a W2 submission file. And then that will total how many are those. So you get your first RCT line. And then again, for those employees that are Medicare, and they will show with a Q. So they're going to show with a Q in the RC record line in two different places. And then that will be the total will be your RCF record. So it's mimicking exactly what the W2 report was doing in submission file. The next one is the qualified overtime reporting. We noticed that we had a condition, so the W2 report matches the qualified overtime report. So now when they run that report, it will match the W2 report by adding the position number. And also we added the position overtime classification, which is looking at each employee's position and how that box is marked on that position. So we added that to the overtime under reports, the qualified overtime report, and then we also added that to the payroll processing qualified overtime pay report. So now if they're using this report and they're running this after each payroll, maybe the qualified overtime, they can now run the W2 report and those two should match now. So one thing to note on this, when they're changing, if they go in and start changing that position overtime classification, it will update this report. So just a reminder on that. And for example, if the position overtime classification is marked as exempt, which will be in this first column here on that qualified overtime report, you're always going to see 0 here in that qualified overtime field at the end of that report. Even if it's marked as included on the future or current payment or excluded, no matter what. So if it's marked exempt, it's always going to show 0 on that report. Even though they said included, it's still going to show 0. So for those employees with the position of overtime classification as non-exempt, but they had that future payment overtime flag marked as excluded, it will not show on the report and it will show a zero. And then if they do have that overtime flag for included on the payment of current or future, then on that report, it's going to show that amount that they are paid for what the amount for the overtime was, excuse me. So again, if you have employees at your districts, if your districts have employees that could be both during the year, maybe they should do the non-exempt, and then they can always use that flag on the future payments so they can get that included. Because if they're marked exempt, no matter what, it's always going to show zero now. Okay. If there's any questions on that, please let us know. The next one is to remove special characters from the Excel sheet names. So in the report manager, kind of show you here an example. In my report manager here, I have a report right here in the description. And if you use any special characters like quotes or these stars, it's not going to show on the Excel spreadsheet name now. So you can only have a max of 31 characters, cannot be blank, cannot begin or end with single quotes. The sheet names must be unique within the workbook, and you cannot have any of these special characters. So what I mean by that, I went in and updated the description here to have these special characters. And then when I run my report in Excel, it's going to actually clear those out. And I have one right here already. So you can see down here at the bottom of my report here, it took out all those characters. So now it's just going to read compensation report. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we fix this description in Excel spreadsheet. Okay. So the next thing is to improve the CSV output totals for the STRS Advanced Payment Report. They noticed when districts that do use this for balancing noticed that there was the numbers were being cut off. They were just showing one and then nothing, even though it might have been 1 million something or 100,000. So that has been corrected. So now it's going to show the full numbers that it should. So this is what it was looking like before, but now it will show the exact number. The next thing was they improve how regular and ACC accounts are being combined on a direct deposit notice. So this would be for districts that use the same position but pay them on two compensations. So maybe they have a regular pay as a teacher, but then they have extended days. So they have another compensation with the exact same number, and they're paying on those two of that contract, but same position. So example, position 5, this employee is getting paid on the same compensation number, even though it's one position, but they have two compensations created for the same position number. So two new compensation number 5s. So saying the teacher was here on the first line and the extended days on the second, what it was doing, it didn't know where to put that second ACC, so it was throwing it up on that first line, so it was showing it incorrectly on the direct deposit. So down here is what we did and corrected it. So regular, the first ACC, $30, which is correct. That's how it should have looked. And then it throws the ACC negative down on the second line, which is correct. And now it shows correctly for that compensation. So if you have districts that do that when they pay them on one position number, but two compensations for that position, it should look better now on the employee's direct deposit. Okay, is there any questions on the what were they? I don't even know what I was working on. On the improvements. Okay. The next one are the bugs. We had a bug on the STRS Advanced Non-Advanced Position report. The district had found that they had employees that had, like, maybe the stop date was the same date of the end date that they were running that report for, and it was not including them. It was skipping over them and not including them. So now if the employee's compensation start and stop date equal to or in that range of the academic year of that fiscal year that they're running, now those employees will be included on that non-advanced position report. So that date bug fix that has been fixed. The next one is to fix a path matching for Social Security privacy field. This was when we added now that certain roles will not see the Social Security number anymore, like on the employee screen or any screen that shows the Social Security number. Only employees that have the group manager, standard user at, or the admin, of course, will always see the Social Security number. Now, if they other roles, they can give their employees this USB privacy Social Security, and then they will see the Social Security where present. So where we say that, maybe under like employee. So now that under more, they will no longer see the Social Security field. It will disappear if they don't have that Social Security rule. So they're not able even to go into more and try to select it and bring it in on the grid. So anywhere in these core options, they will not see the Social Security number or anywhere else unless they have this role. And then in that bug fix, he worked on the USAS side also to do the USAS Privacy Vendor ACH and the USAS Privacy Tax ID. So again, they can get these roles to those employees, and then they will be able to see the tax ID where present on the USAS side. Marcia stated that she has some employees at group mayor that still need the privacy so to see. Okay, well then we will look into that. Um, According to the issue, group manager is supposed to see that. So we will make note and we will look into that. Thank you. All right, made that out. Thank you, Marcia. Okay, we will move on to the next one. Okay, the CSRS monthly report was not using the correct ending date of the payroll. So now that has been corrected and it's now using the ending date of that last pay date of that month. So I think it was not counting the days correctly because it was using the last day of that month, like June 30th, and it wasn't using the last pay date ending date of that month to get the retirement service queries. So now, if districts are using this and running that monthly, that should balance better with their figures. The payroll posts create historical payroll for federal record, payroll item federal record for exempt employees. We had an issue where they were running their quarter report and any employees that were ran through payroll that were exempt from federal tax were causing this calculate gross different than total adjusted gross for federal records. And that was because if they looked in their employee dashboard at their payroll payments paid, the federal record was showing applicable and total gross, but no amount, which is correct. But it was still using it in that calculation. And so what we did was take this federal record completely out of the equation for those employees. So they're not going to be in that calculation on the quarter report anymore. And they also won't see them on the employee dashboard. So if they're exempt, they're not going to see this line anymore. So that will be taken off and they'll just go with what taxes were actually withheld. So they should not see that issue. So the next thing then with that down here in the patches, we had to go ahead and find out from the historical payrolls before this patch to correct that, to find any payrolls that had exempt employees. And then what they're going to do when they sent this patch out, I think that was the last one they did, was it sent a list to us at SSDT behind the scenes list for any employees that have that exempt mark, and they're going to go ahead and do a patch to correct those employees for those past payrolls. So that is coming, and they'll, I'm sure, once they get that fixed, they'll let the ITC knows when that's coming out for those past employees. So that kind of ties in with this fix here, the patch and the payroll post for this. Okay. And the other patch we had was the updated surge charge for fiscal 26 to 33,000. So that was on the patch on that. Okay. Was there any questions on the payroll side of releases? All right. I thank you, and I will pass this on to Mary.
Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm going to share my screen here. Excuse me. And first thing we're going to talk about are ESS releases. Hope everyone can see the screen okay. The first item, there was an improvement on the cron expression that worked with frontline absence management and ESS. So that was a behind the scenes improvement. A second item that we had was warning message when closing a timesheet period on edit. So inside of the timesheet module with the manager as a timesheet manager, if I would to go in and manually close a period, this button here is the close period. Excuse me. So if I was to click on that, it will give you this message here so that you know what it is going to affect if you actually do close it. The next the next item was they included substitute comments. This is in preparation for the SubHub module so that the sub can see any comments that the teacher put in on their view on the SubHub side. The next item that they improved was the validation to verify a start time is after or before the end time, and that the end time is after the start time on the timesheet. So I'm going to go back in here again. So if I go into a timesheet, let's see, I'll just go into the district timesheet. And what we're talking about here is if this start time says 6 a.m. and the end time says 5 a.m., it's going to give you a warning. So if I go in here and try to edit that, let's do. It gives you this warning here so that they can't do that. And if they continue on and try to save it, it gives you another bigger warning. So that's to prevent some problems that were occurring there. Oops. And then the next item they had was another internal improvement. to upgrade items that work in the workflow area for timesheets and for leave requests. There were a couple bugs in the leave request area. Uh, if there was a change that someone wanted to make on a leave request, like a comment or something to that effect, if the balance was 0 for that particular person, so this came up for a personal leave, if the balance was 0 and they went in and tried to adjust a comment or add something to the leave request, a substitute, for example, and tried to save it, it would say that you could not save it because that was going below the 0. So that has been fixed so that it will not try to deduct that leave request amount again from the balance. And then the next item, there was a null pointer exception again, so that was occurring where, hold on just a second, I have my notes here. When they had a blank start and stop time, and there was if they had a blank and start and stop time, it was erroring out on the line, even if the line was blank or null. So that has been corrected so that it doesn't create that error message. It was when they were trying to add a timesheet holiday, and if there was any line on there that had nulls in it, it was creating that error. So that has been fixed. Are there any questions on the ESS improvements? Okay. Make sure that in the chat we don't have anything here. Okay, the next area we're going to talk about is Ippy Dippy. There were 2 regular releases and 1 fix. So on the improvement side, we did have some issues with the comparison between the credential ID and the certifications. When it was looking these up against the ODE site, which we actually, the PCS pool, what that actually does is it pulls in the credentials and licenses for the teachers and puts them in a central repository on our end. You then will sync with that between the district and our central repository. And so what was happening is when it was checking those certifications, if they had a lowercase OH in the front of their credential ID, then it was not finding it on the state's information. So that's been fixed so that it is now case insensitive and it will find the credentials or the credential ID on the state's file. We also had where if the professional certification store, which is the central repository, was updating, it updates once a week. If someone tried to run a job to sync certifications, it caused some problems. So what they did was they now put an error to say that the PCS is in progress, and if you're trying to sync your district's certifications while that is running, it will error out. And it will give you this error message when that happens. And then the third thing, and I think I have this picture in the wrong spot, so I apologize for that. I'll move it after the meeting. Then after that, we decided that it was best to remove the central repository update that goes to our central repository, the ODE's information that goes to our central repository will only be run by the developers or support staff. It was causing, there were some people that were running it and then it was locking things up. So we decided that since it's so intensive, that it was best to just move it out and then only have one or two people run it so that it doesn't cause any issues. Okay, that's everything on the PCS certificate. Then on the import kiosk guide was still inside of the help system. So now we have user links on the documentation view that are pertinent to Ippy Dippy and not kiosk. We also added a CEU value to the activity approval grid. So if we go into, oops, sorry. If you go in here, you can see what that value will be if it is approved. So that was something that some of the districts had asked for. So once they do approve that, then it gets calculated into the total CEUs for the plan. Then we can get to the bugs. In this case here, there were some plans that said that they got messages where the plan was submitted. The person that was going to approve the plan never could find that plan on their screen. So in reality, the submit really failed, but it was sending the email out anyway. So they fixed that so that it would not send the email until it was actually approved and or submitted properly. The next bug was that it was allowing the user to submit a plan to an invalid committee. And what that means is that if the committee had specific building codes and I, as the user who is creating the plan, did not have that building code, it was still allowing me to send my plan in with that committee. So that has been fixed. For this one, also kind of related to the one above, if I was assigning a committee to that plan template, then I was able to actually put a committee in there that did not pertain. So that has been fixed to where you can't do that. Activity options in a group. Hold on just a second. I want to get to that section on my notes. So when the groups are created, option groups are created on the template, you can make adjustments to which order they are in. Once it's in there, you cannot change that any longer. You can edit that template, but when you go in and add another set of option groups, you can only move and adjust those new ones that you're adding in. So that has been, in the past, you were able to move anyone around and that was causing issues. So they made it so that you can still edit, but you have to do it within, if I add 3 more option groups, I can go ahead and put them in, but I can only adjust those 3 on top of the ones that were already there. The next one was a bug that kind of went in with that committee piece. If there are no building codes assigned to a committee. It should allow you to have any position with any building code, and you can pick that particular template. It was not allowing you to do that. It was kind of forcing people to put building codes into the committee for that. So now it's been fixed to where if there is no building code assigned, it will allow you to apply that template to anybody. And the next one is where we are kind of disconnecting USPS from IPI-DIPI, so that if you have a choice, if you want to use USPS and use it in conjunction with IPI-DIPI, you can. And if you do not have USPS, then you can also allow staff to register inside of IPI-DIPI. This bug was introduced when they started that disconnection, and it still wasn't allowing an individual to register on their own. That has been fixed so that if you are not integrating, you still can register. So that was the last piece for that. They did some internal patches. These are all programming issues which are not front end, so that was completed as well. And that is it for IPI-DIPI. If there are any questions, please add them to the chat. And Michelle, if there are any other items you want to discuss, otherwise we can close for the day.
I'm good, Mary. You can wrap it up. Thank you.
Okay. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day and a great weekend.
Thank you.